Thank you so much for joining me today. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself, such as your major and your year, and what your role is in Trell?
Yeah, so my name is Kush Shah. I'm an aerospace engineering major and I'm in my sophomore year. And so my role in Trell is the guidance, navigation, and controls team principal engineer. What the GNC team does is we simulate all of the rocket's flight dynamics, and we also write all of the software that actually controls the rocket's, physical, uh, I guess it controls its physical state. So a lot of it is attitude control and position control.
Okay, let's keep going. How long have you been here?
I joined last semester, so fall of 2019.
Okay, how did you hear about Trell, or how did that you joining come about?
So I was actually talking to Sarah Massamore, who's now the leaving AV software principal engineer, and she is going to work at Blue Origin, and obviously that's a company that I'm very interested in working at as well.
Yeah.
And so when I was just talking to her as to how can someone be able to get the opportunity to work at Blue Origin or SpaceX or some of these awesome companies, she could not say more about how Trell has provided her a lot of those opportunities and those skills. And I am really happy that I joined because I really love what I do now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there something about like where you want to go with your career, or anything like maybe a passion or something that motivates you to be part of Trell?
Well, I mean, in high school, I was actually really, really into robotics, and I really loved robotics. And I think if it weren't for that, I don't think I would be an engineer. But it's really just my experience with robotics that really got me interested in not just like the hardware aspect or the software aspect. I really like both of them,
Hmm.
and so that's why I think doing GNC is where sort of where the physics meets the actual software side of it. So that's why I really like what I'm doing now.
Yeah, that's good. Have you had like a passion towards space, or would you say it's really just the more technical side of things?
Yeah, so I think it definitely just started with more technical things, but over last summer, I got to work on doing satellite orbit determination. And I think most people will tell you that, once you do one thing that's space related,
Hmm.
you become fully obsessed. And now, I was never the person to watch launches and keep up with the news and everything, but now it's just something I do, and it's just a part of my daily life now.
Yeah, that's really cool. Um, what are you hoping to do post-grad, or once you're done Trail?
So I'm hoping to I definitely want to work at a rocket company for at least 3 4 years. Just because I mean I love what I do and I'd love to see how commercial companies actually go about launching their rockets because it's a lot more complicated to get a rocket into to deliver a satellite into orbit than it is to just get to 100 kilometers. So
Hmm.
I would definitely like to see that challenge. But down the road, I'm not fully sure. I'm thinking possibly getting an MBA and staying still probably within engineering, but I haven't thought too far along.
Yeah. Would you say that you have like a specific like space mission or anything, or are you definitely, would you say like NASA, or would you say more the commercial side is really like interesting you?
I think the commercial side is really interesting just because there's I feel like there's a lot less restrictions. You have a lot more freedom when you're there, just because you're not really beholden to, I guess, the government per se. You're more just beholden to how can I save the company money, right? That's
Hmm.
what private companies are trying to do. And so when it comes to that, it's a lot more basically do a lot more things. So for example, I don't think NASA would have ever really developed reusable rocket boosters because they don't really care about their budget. They'll just get however much money they need to from the government. But SpaceX or Blue Origin, companies like that that actually don't have an unlimited budget, basically need to find ways to save money, and so it sort of creates the need for innovation.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good. I haven't thought about it that way, so that's good. Do you have goals or things like that you're hoping to achieve during your time working with the lab?
I really just personally, I want to become the best engineer that I can be, and I hope that I can provide other people the opportunity to become the same as well. Just because I feel that GNC, there's not enough people that are super that are not there's not enough people going into GNC as I think that there should be, and I
Mhm.
think it's like one of the most important aspects of the rocket. And so again, like going back to what I said before about the reusable rocket boosters, like that entire problem is a big GNC problem. Like how do you have rocket boosters land in a very specific spot safely away from everyone else, you know? And
Yeah.
so if I can allow people to become good GNC engineers, that's as much as I can do from like my role, like then I would be really happy with the work I do.
Yeah. What do you think that your legacy for Trell is around what we're doing with our rocket right now?
I guess a lot of it would be just determining design
Hmm.
in terms of how exactly, because there's always multiple ways to solve the problem. And so I hope that, you know, I can be the person who is able to provide information. Like GNC doesn't make a lot of the decisions, but we do a lot of our simulations. And so a lot of our simulations can help provide pros and cons and help the analysis of different designs. And so if we can do that effectively, I would say that would be a great legacy to have.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. What is your average day like in your position? I know obviously right now it's a little bit different, but what did that look
Yeah.
like before? And what does it look like now?
So my average day is not like most engineers, you could say. A lot of it is really meeting with Grace and Vishnu and meeting with other design teams and trying to provide as much advice from a GNC perspective as possible. So some of these teams could include both the fins and the RCS team. So like GNC won't design the actual nozzles and the piping that will be going through the RCS system. But a lot of what we will do is actually determining when we should fire the RCS system and how can
Yeah.
we keep our rockets pointing upwards, right? And so, um, in terms of like providing the amount of helium that, like an approximate estimate of how much helium we're going to be needing, and providing wind models and stuff like that, a lot of what we're doing is really clarifying different aspects of what our flight's going to be looking like. In addition to that, so the one part is like going to other teams externally, and then internally for GNC, a lot of what I'm doing is just figuring out how the flow of information is going to work, because we want to our system be very modular because a lot of teams use it. We want it to basically be like we can have our entire code be like a black box
Mhm.
that everyone can really easily understand. So
Yeah.
um, a lot of it is just like, you know, doing that and managing the projects and helping people out with what they do.
Yeah, that's good. So I'm assuming most of your work happens in the Trell room, like on the computers.
We actually do most of, I mean, yeah, we when we were back on campus, yeah, we would definitely meet in person, and but we would do work on our laptops. So luckily, now with the pandemic that's going on, luckily we're not too terribly hindered in terms of our workflow.
Yeah.
And I think Zoom has definitely made it easy, especially with the screen share capabilities and stuff like that. So something I always love to do is have at least two people working on a project. People are always collaborating with each other, and so like exchanging ideas. And so at least having Zoom to share the screen and like see exactly what's going on is very helpful for us.
Yeah, yeah. We've done a lot of that on the business team as well. It was kind of easy for us to transfer over just because we were all kind of just working remotely already, and then now it's like, okay, we already know how to do this. So yeah,
Yeah.
I see. That's really helpful. Um, when have you had a time where you did a project or something like went really successful that made you feel like pride for your work and what you're doing in Trell?
Yeah, so the first semester that I was in trouble last semester, I was brought on to design an what's called a Kalman filter
Mhm.
for to basically get a little bit smoother of a signal from our inertial measurement unit. And so throughout, like, I developed the entire thing, and through my research I really just like was thinking about it. I'm like, this really doesn't seem like the right solution, and I did more research and like found some better solutions as to how we can actually filter the data coming in. And I presented that to both my principal engineer at the time and then eventually the directors of engineering, which then just became Vishnu and Grace. And so really being able to show off that like I like really explain my opinion and be able to say I think that what we were doing before was not good and we can actually use this better method, and just really explaining all the research I did, I felt really accomplished.
Yeah.
Especially because like I was the only like I was the only general engineer there. Everybody else who was presenting was like the PE or the REs, and so just being able to do something within my first semester like that, and seeing that I as an individual have such a big impact on the design of our rocket is awesome.
Yeah. So did we end up going with that design, or did like that help where we went from there?
Yeah, I think we're currently going to go with the design that I proposed. So I think we might like tune it up a little bit, but yeah, so far it's looking like we're gonna go with that.
Yeah, that's really good. Awesome. Um, how do you have you had any internships, or are there any job opportunities that you would love to have upcoming, or maybe you had one lined up for this summer? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so last summer I worked at a small defense contractor in Central California. And my project for them was to be able to determine the orbit of satellites. And we wanted to do that using low power methods. So it involved using a magnetometer. And so the way we would do it is we would sort of detect Earth's magnetic field, and we had like a model of the Earth's magnetic field versus like position. So if we knew that we were getting a certain reading, we could actually correlate that to like an actual like latitude, longitude, and altitude, which would be the position of the satellite. Um, so that was one of the craziest and toughest projects I've ever had. But I mean, it was a really cool GNC project, and it really got me really into GNC, and made like I knew I was kind of into it, but like this sort of like solidified it for me when I was like working on this project.
Yeah.
And this summer, I'm gonna have a remote internship with there's a rocket company out in Los Angeles called Relativity Space. So they actually 3D print their entire rocket, and so
Wow,
I'm doing GNC work for them.
that's really cool. That's really cool. I'm starting to think about how all this remoteness is going to work, even trying to do like that level of stuff. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, and they have their critical design review like in late April, which is right after my internship ends, basically. So like everything that I write is going to be like heavily reviewed, and I'm like that's kind of crazy, but like there means there's gonna be a lot of work to be doing, and I mean I like being busy than not.
Yeah, no, that sounds like really great experience. I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
So tell me something interesting about yourself that isn't related to Trell.
So I I really like to produce music actually, and I've been doing that since I think seventh grade. I started off really, really bad, and I mean, I slowly got better.
Mhm.
And I'm like happier with where I am at now than like I guess like 5, 6 years ago. But it's just something I do to relax,
Yeah.
because I really, really like music, and uh, like now that like I'm going through doing music and stuff like that, and I'm also an engineering student, I'm like sort of seeing like the way that I approach my music production is actually pretty similar to like how I might solve a problem in Trell. It's just like I see different layers and I can see that something's missing, and or in this case here that something's missing, and I'll like go in and be like, all right, I kind of know what I want to do here, and there are like a couple of different ways I can do it, and so I try them out and see which sounds the best, and then like that's kind of like the same way that I approach solving problems. Like there's some sort of discrepancy, and I'm like, all right, so this is sort of the effect that I want to go for, and there's a couple of different methods I can use, so let's see which one works out the best. So it's kind of cool seeing like the two worlds that I thought were completely different sort of combined together.
No, for sure. I think those definitely apply, and it sounds like you are starting to use that for sure. What type of music are you producing, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I started off producing EDM music when I was in like middle school and like the first part of high school, but then I started getting really into hip hop like
Mhm.
midway through high school, and so it was kind of tough for me to transition from going over from like EDM music to hip hop, because like they are so different from each other in like what the it's not that one's easier or harder than the other. They're just like different from each other. So like the mindset that you have to produce one way versus another was difficult. But now like I'm finally understood how to like produce hip hop and rap, and I really really like it. And once in a while, I'll like produce an EDM one, but
Yeah.
like so like sort of the principles are like different, but yeah, it's a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
I was in band in high school, so I can imagine that like going from electronic to more of like, more of like the bass things that need to go in the background, how those can be different but also overlap. So
Yeah.
that's cool. I that sounds really exciting.
Thank you.
Cool, cool. Okay. Are there any interesting or fun stories that you have from your time here with the Texas Rocket Engineering Lab?
Oh man, this is like the one question I actually didn't have like a good answer for.
Any like social events or
Okay,
just projects maybe that went really funny or I don't know.
I guess like in terms of like the social events, we had the Trell social last semester, and I didn't really, again, this was my first semester, and I didn't really like know too many people on the team because like GNC sort of, especially as a general engineer, sort of stay separate from most of the team. So I didn't know how it would go just because I'm like, oh man, is this just gonna be like a bunch of nerds like hanging out and talking? But like it was a lot of fun. And I don't know. Like, it was like everybody was really really nice and just like willing to talk even though like they didn't even know who I was and I didn't even know who they were.
Yeah,
And it just made me feel like I was like part of a family more than just like a rocket lab.
for sure, for sure. Yeah, I wish I could have gone to those. I heard that they were pretty fun and a lot of the same sentiment of it just makes you feel closer to everybody even though you might have not known them before then, but then you just feel like all of a sudden you're like, wow, we are a team here. So that's
Yeah,